All right. Greetings, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Will and Jerod Make a Game. My name is Jerod,
And I'm Will.
and we are making a game. We are shockingly, even to ourselves, because we took a little hiatus there for not too long, maybe like 3 weeks to a month there. Just keep. We're still working on the game very diligently. Will is well on his way, making the Lords of Terror, and just sounds like it's getting close to that getting wrapped up. And I am full on working on a new kind of mini campaign for Mutant City Blues by Pelgrane Press. Now that that is now free to do stuff for, and we're excited to be back. We're on session 4 for full-on playtest for Honor Bound. I just sent those over to Will for him to take a look at some point in time. I know I've kept a sheet, you're fully updated and everything that we've done. We just did an episode last night. So yeah, I'm back and I'm ready to do some more episodes. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I started to laugh there because I didn't realize you were about to say episodes of playtesting. I thought you were going to say episodes of this podcast or video cast, and I thought, oh crap! Along with forgetting to double check which one of us last did the intro, I also forgot to double check the exact episode count. So this is probably 9 or 10, maybe.
No, we're on like 13, 14.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I took a peek. I know I saw one that said 12. I'm in the process of getting like uploaded, so they have a little border on it, so they don't show the other stuff from my end too. So yeah, I think this is like 13 or 14. So I guess we
Okay.
better start talking about real stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Real stuff. What have we been talking about all this other time,
Yeah, that's a
man?
good point.
Yeah. Well, also thinking of that, we wound up taking a bit of a break here, but thankfully, our listeners and viewers are probably not even going to realize that
Nope.
because we're on a bit of a delay here. We've built up a backlog, so you're joining us on this journey, little bit in the past, which is probably good for us in general to get out ahead of things.
Yeah, we started this project of doing the podcast back in December. It's now middle of May at this point, but we just dropped the first episode today, May
Yeah.
13th. So
Yeah.
we're also recording our what we think is the 13th or 14th episode right now. And it is a topic that has vexed me, I think, going all the way back to episode 3 or 4 when we were talking about it.
Okay.
And there is a new approach to something that we had already kind of talked a little bit about it, but I think I'm whole hog on it, and I would like to want to talk to you about how you feel about it. One of the
Okay.
differences that we're doing for Honor Bound that we haven't done for any of the other Wound by Tension games as of yet, because hopefully this is also a success, and then there'll be other games and whatnot, is working on an experience type system. Is that trying to work on what makes the Wound by Tension system so great, like for Party First, because it is a horror, great for one shots, like fantastic for one shots. Um, However, for whatever reason, in my head and in my soul of souls, I love like getting experience, getting your characters better and bigger and all that stuff, building these grandiose stories because I don't feel you can properly get the same kind of kick out of a one shot. Although I
Hmm.
will say, after doing some really good Party First ones and some Goblin Market one shots, I'm getting it narrowed down to a couple of scenarios that I really like to do that. That being said, I want to talk about experience points,
Okay.
how you gain saga points, so all these kind of advancement sort of things, and how it relates to the dreaded word species in culture.
Okay.
And
Quick,
yes,
quick groundwork here, because I think this might be tricky both for me getting my head back into this after the break that we took, and for listeners because I know we've gone through several iterations of this kind of system, and particularly of some of the points and that sort of thing. So um, I just think it might be good as you present that question for me, kind of sketch out that ground rule for me where we are right now. For instance, this one I think I can quote off the top of my head at least. Saga in the end, the saga points are the name we settled on for kind of the equivalent to the party first party points or the general tension engine adventure points, right? They are the currency that you are spending as a player character for the most part, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I know we went round and round for quite a while trying to settle on the right name for that. So okay, perfect.
Yeah, that actually happened during an episode, actually. That's something
I
that we
I
were
thought
we were trying to
so.
figure it out. And then you said saga points, and that's kind of been it. Like we solved it amazingly enough. So
So how
so
are we hooking that in on XP and species and such?
okay. So I've wanted to build in a very robust experience system. And originally how I had it set up, and I've done play testing with it, and it was a little bit too clunky as I imagined it. There's still promise there. So the idea was that characters would train before the adventure. And it does two things. One, you roll dice to build up your saga point pools, and the GM gets tension point pools, right? So build those up by rolling dice. And then the training, depending on how many dice you roll, you put those into an experience pool that you can then spend at the end of the adventure. Which, yeah,
Oh,
like
I just wanted to throw it out there. I know it's a terminology thing. For listeners, when you say adventure, I know this is something also that we went back and forth about a little bit. You're meaning in most, I think the most common parlance, that's per session, right? Every time players sit down to play, you wanted them to have this kind of downtime representation, right?
not
Not just
necessarily.
the start of the whole arc of the adventure.
Well, that's a good clarification. So how I built the system for the adventures, and actually in Honor Bound, I'm going to call them sagas. It gives it the much more of a
Oh
what
yeah,
type feeling, right?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that so? Each adventure is going to be a saga, and each saga is going to be between 2 and 3 sessions usually. It's going to be
Okay.
a full short story arc, okay? And then once that little story arc is done, then you do training again.
Okay,
Now,
gotcha. So it would truly be at the beginning or end of a saga, not a session. Okay.
yep. Yeah, exactly right. Because I know we had talked about it where I was kind of gung ho on the idea at first, but then I was like, wait, it just doesn't make sense to stop in the middle, or unless you do like a bunch of one shots that are hooked together, which you can kind of do. But regardless, the idea is to do that training and all that. Okay. Well, the idea was solid and it did everything that I wanted it to do, but it added another step. And the other thing that you pointed out is that adding how the dice worked in a different way
Mm,
because you weren't spending saga points to keep the dice for the mechanics because the system at this point is rock solid. Like I'm just tweaking little things here and there at this point. The mechanics work, the system's great at this point. Um, so that part, it was just too much. It was just too much of adding another mechanical system. Let's stick with what we have. Okay.
hmm.
And right now, how the system works is you always take your attribute plus your skill, right? That's how many six-sided dice you get to roll. You always keep 2 dice regardless. And then you spend meta points to keep more dice, right? Or narratively do something to keep more dice or whatever. Okay.
Sure.
So, so that didn't quite work. The idea was great, but it didn't work. So there is something in the last couple play tests that I've done that the players have said that I really wanted to start latching onto is when they pick their characters for the species, we just wrote up some quick 2 paragraph. Now, since then, we've got a tome of lore about this world and some of the species, right?
Right, right.
But to begin with, we just gave them like 2 paragraphs, making sure like not saying like, hey, all species are like this or whatever, right? But it was like, hey, this is how they appear. Here's some of their social networking. That's it. The rest of it was left from the players to put it together because we're just doing this for the playtest part. Well, I kept getting this comment about how much fun it was to have this cultural freedom to be able to make stuff up. And I was like, well, I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Like, that wasn't my intention on it, but I am encouraging the players, like, hey, if that's something you think should be in there, please do it. And the reason I'm doing that is that about 30 years ago, when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons back in college, we had a brand new D&D player come into our group, wanted to play a gnome, and none of us had actually played a gnome before. And this was a world that I was currently building on there. I had an idea of what I wanted gnomes to be like, but when he started playing, I was like, "Hey, just have fun with it." We don't really know because he'd ask me sometimes like, "Well, would a gnome do that?" And I'm like, "You're the representative at this point. You tell me, like, is that what a gnome's like?" And we had a blast. He came up with a handshake. He did some new language stuff with it, and that bit of world building in ownership of the character was a ton of fun. And I know that that's something that our group still talks about to this day sometimes.
Oh, nice.
So I wanted to give the same sort of autonomy for these species as well. Not as broad, right? So there's a comment that they kept bringing back is like, yeah, I really like that. I really like that. And I'm like, okay, well, what if I made it that each character has to be a different species? So if we're going with this all for one and
Hmm.
unity theme throughout the game, let's have it be from a vast swath of the culture, of the society, I should say. And then once you've picked that species, you're now the custodian of that. And a way to earn experience points is to introduce a new cultural thing to your species. And I made a list of 4 things. I did. Where is it at here? I did some research. And you added to the language, introduce a belief, introduce a custom, introduce a ceremony, and I did a 5th thing, and introduce a social organization within your species. Now, you just get one
Okay.
experience point for doing that, but it's a way to gain experience while you're playing. It does another thing for me as well. It takes some of the onus off of us about exactly what the species should be. I still want a half page, right? Minimum for each species, but we can leave a lot of stuff out. Like
Hmm.
players can now come up with their own holidays. And then to take this idea just one step further is what if the experience system is more based on you build up your culture, you add a world building aspect to System Prime, which is the name we're tagging with the world that we're in right now, System Prime, right? And then the other 2 things that I put in for experience, how you gain experience, is to, oh, I just had it. There it is. Um, fulfill a professional covenant, which I'm not quite sure about that one, but you do something that's within your job. You either work something towards it or you expound upon what it means to be within that profession that you chose for your character. And then the last way you can get an experience point is to bond with one of your other players. And that one you can get 1 experience point per other person that you bond with maximum with the other number of players. And by bonding, it's by, in this game, we're going to have these intermissions here and there where you have a scene just with them. And I mean, it can be with more than one person, but it has to be specific about a topic that you're going to talk about because everyone's going to have their own individual backgrounds that they are going to be interwoven at some point in time. That is a lot that I threw at you.
You probably saw me scribbling notes while we went. I
It was
started to raise my finger at one point about, I should say one like sentence about this one thing and then let Jerod continue so I don't lose it because I know there'll be more. And then I realized I should just make notes. Okay.
So that's my new idea is to have that be all for experience points, and then I'll talk about a new way to get saga points. It's not really new because we've talked about it before and I've had it in the document for a while now. But I think I've found a way to laser focus it to make the game exactly what we want it to look like and a game that the players and the GM want it to look like too. So it can be a little bit more malleable. Uh, but what do you think about that for experience points?
Actually, first, because I think these are hopefully smaller items that are maybe tangential to the XP discussion, but they kind of came up as you were discussing things here, and I don't want to forget to mention them. Just a quick note, because I'm not sure this has quite come up to my recognition before with System Prime. That made me realize, crap, this may be one of those points where we were both kind of unspoken thinking different things.
Okay.
Just my thought or understanding was that System Prime was kind of the capital solar system, and we would establish some rough lore there and leave essentially the rest of the galaxy and many other systems kind of up for grabs. Maybe we'd mention some names or something, to give people at least that much to start with, but they would go from there. But something about what you said there made me think, oh, wait, was Jerod more thinking that like that is kind of the whole I guess the whole galaxy? That's not, I'm crossing terms here, but like the whole of the setting, I guess.
Yeah, from the research I've done on there, there's no real good way to do it. So here's how I'm parsing it out: is that so we are actually in agreement. Okay,
Okay.
so I want to review some of the history though that we're going to differ slightly in only from the historical part from something I put in there. Is that all right? So yes, you got System Prime, which is going to be a system of planets, right? So like would the Milky Way be a system? Is that's probably too big.
No, so a system is like our solar system. So
Right,
the sun to Pluto, give or take, depending on your definition of things like planets.
right.
So the Milky Way would be a galaxy. Then it is a system of systems, so to speak.
So in order to travel, so interstellar travel is something that this society had and no longer has. So I am picturing in my head that when these arcs got launched off for the history, is that there are 4 to 5 different systems out there that no longer have communication with each other. So what we're working on right now is just System Prime.
Okay. Now, now I think I kind of gotcha. I had sort of been thinking from the lore we'd been talking about that interstellar travel was less common than it used to be, but that it has been returning through kind of some alternate methods, so that there was kind of a bigger playground. But okay, I think now I kind of understand that one little thing that comment made me question where we were on that. So,
Yeah.
the other one that is not explicitly related to XP I'm just throwing this out here for a thought. You mentioned possibly doing a requirement of each player having to pick a different species, and um, I can understand your goal there and kind of how you got to that point, but I would just float that one of the few direct complaints that I've gotten about Party First
Hmm,
is the requirement written in there that each player pick a different class, and
really?
that they not overlap. So I don't know for sure whether players might react similarly to a one species rule or one per species anyway. But I could maybe see that coming up. So I don't
Sure.
know. Might be worth kind of asking some potential players or general
Yeah.
people about.
And and that's something too, is that these are all just rules that are going to be just um, recommendations, I guess, right?
Sure,
Um,
sure,
so yeah, that's a good point, though, not making it a restrictive part of the build, but just making that suggestion is that, but
yeah,
maybe, there are a lot of things about siblings and family that happen in this game as well. So maybe you want to be the same species, but I'm also trying to make cross species family units a thing
hmm
as well. Um, but we'll see how that goes lore wise. But yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point. I don't want to force anyone not to do it or to do it, I guess. Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
I think we're probably fine, like you said, just writing it as a recommendation. So, one sentence there. Hey, it's recommended that each player picks a different species. But do what works best for your group or something like that. Yeah.
Right on.
Okay. All right. On to the actual XP itself stuff. Um, I do have to say that in general, um, I do like this. Um, I have another follow up question that is about the XP though, um, because I know we went back and forth talking about some different possible iterations on the idea of a personal saga, and I know I spent some time kind of relating it to, oh, I forget what 7C second edition actually calls it now, but a similar sort of multi-step personal quest, and then depending on how many steps long it is, you get a certain amount of XP for that, and then you can invest that in buying more skills and whatever. Um, so, does this XP system or some variation on this, in your mind, replace the personal saga that we were still kind of trying to hammer out specifics on, or does this work together somehow that I just didn't quite hear the connection?
Sure. Great question. I haven't thrown out the personal saga or even what that means. So I'm hoping right now for the playtest part of it is that I want to use both. Okay. So there is still a personal saga or still a storytelling track, basically, and the rewards for that are going to be health or honor, permanent ones, um, money, or an ally in gaining rivals. Okay,
Okay.
through the storytelling part of it,
Okay.
the experience points can purchase abilities, attributes, advantages, stuff like that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm running both next to each other.
hmm
It needs way more play testing because right now everyone is focusing on the experience points, which is great. That's fine because it also is helping drive some interesting, cool parts. Like I know I put it into a document real quick, but the Iliad character, so it's our kind of a crystal humanoid type figure, is that they came up with this lore on their own before I even introduced this thing. It's called the Heart Shard. So it's a piece of their crystal that they can pull out that It's not an organ of theirs. It's more of just like a knife that they can always have on them, but it's called the heart shard. I'm
Okay.
like, yeah, that's awesome. Why
Yeah.
not? Cool.
Sounds
So,
cool. Yeah.
and so that's just something that they made up on their own. So, experience points are going to try and run next to the personal story right now. The hardest part for me is trying to get that personal saga story to blend in because right now
Mm-hmm.
it all has to be told in flashbacks.
Mm.
So I love the personal saga system. I don't want it to go away, but right now this experience point thing is working. So
Yeah. Okay.
I
Well,
don't know. I don't know. I want to keep the personal saga though. Yeah.
mostly tabling personal saga for now, but I will say maybe then something to look at or start turning over is if maybe it needs to be reworked some way that doesn't require the flashbacks. It sounds from what you're saying
Hmm.
that was what was throwing the pace and kind of the connection off. So
Yeah,
um,
it
anyway,
is.
we don't need to go way down that rabbit hole at the moment because we're bad about that.
Yes.
But I'm gonna jot down a note about that. Small saga. Okay. So on the XP front, then my next thought about it, and I love the categories that are kind of almost prompts to the players, at least to know, hey, here is a different category of something to come up with, which I was a little worried at first when you first brought this up and you were remarking about the story of your gnome player. Only in the context, my worry that is, was only in the context of when I very first started out playing, it was very difficult for me
Yeah.
to come up with what my character should do. It felt too daunting to I don't to think. I've read a million fantasy novels, but to think what is appropriate for this world, in this case, whatever. What is the default D&D setting? I hear so many different ones. I forget now which one's actually the default. Is that
It's
Forgotten Realms?
is it Mistra anymore? Like I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever the fourth ed default setting was, that's what it was. Anyway, I had trouble like coming up with that. But a bit later, when we switched to playing a game of Hunter, it became much easier for me to interact with the world um, by having the baseline of, hey, this is the 1990s or whatever. Like, I know that cell phones exist,
Right.
or I can go to the library or whatever, and that grounding really helped me interact more as a player and coming up with stuff in regards to the weirder fantastical elements. So my initial worry was that maybe it would be too open ended and maybe similarly daunting for new players, whereas a very experienced player may be very excited to go out and world build and tell their own thing. That is a long preface to say, though, that I think the categories, like I said, are good prompts to help kind of combat some of that newbie uncertainty. It may not fix it entirely, but I think it's a step in the right direction to at least give a little bit of a scaffold here to say, you don't have to come up with just literally anything. Hey, the map's blank. Tell me what that is. But at least, hey, what's a ceremony in your culture? Like now there's something for people to grasp onto. So well done there. Um, I'm curious, as you're currently seeing this, is there a limit of any kind in how often people can trigger this? I guess kind of twofold thoughts there. One being a particularly outgoing player might inadvertently kind of overtake the narrative of the session, and a particularly kind of power gamey player might do it on purpose to kind of game XP, which could cause problems from a mechanical standpoint and from a just table politics standpoint. So I'm curious, do you do something like, hey, everybody can get this XP trigger once? Like everybody can do one ceremony. Everyone can do one belief. That type of thing? Or how are you doing that right now?
Yeah, I'm going a little bit more general on it with the idea of you can do one cultural thing that you get an experience points for the saga. Okay.
Okay,
It's
okay.
you can come up with as many as you want while
But
you're
only one
playing,
gets the
but
point.
yeah, you're only gonna get one experience point for per saga, basically. So you get 1 point per saga for adding to your species culture. You get a maximum one experience point for expounding on your professional field in some way. You get, I gotta pull up the thing. So professional culture. And then the last thing where you can get the most experience points on is going to be bonding with the other players. That one you get one experience point per player that you bond with. You cannot repeat bonding.
That actually takes me to another question about the bonding. Then, at least the way you prefaced it a moment ago, would was that there was a need for the GM to set up a specific scene with you and the other character in order to bond. Did I understand that correctly?
So how I've got the saga structured right now is that you do a scene and there's be an intermission, like other games call it like downtime, right? And it's just the break between battles or between drama points. Like right now in our current saga, they just, long story short, they figured out who hired a rigger to overclock an electro rapier to kill someone in a duel. Okay, so they just got done with that. They come back to the guild house where maybe the big bad is meeting with the inner council and is saying you have 24 hours to make a decision on this, and then you've got 24 hours, so you have an intermission, you have some downtime. And during that downtime, I'm giving the players an option of things to do. Like if you don't want to do anything, that's fine. I'm not going to force you, right? People get uncomfortable at different things, but I'm also going to say like, hey, if you just want to rest for that, fine. If you just need some health or honor or whatever, that you can do that. But you can also you can do bonding with someone during that time. So I'm giving area for time for people to do it.
Okay.
Now, if I can figure out how to put that personal saga in there as well, right?
Hmm.
Maybe have it included with the bonding somehow. Like, yeah, yeah, that's the
Yeah.
idea anyway. So I want everyone to have
Okay.
their own dramatic story as well.
Okay. I like that. That's definitely better. I was worried um, that there was going to be a lot of pressure on the GM to set those up and to make sure that that's spread evenly among the players and that type of thing. Makes way more sense with this follow up from you. You've just kind of provided the open window, the downtime window, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if any of them choose, they're like, hey, I want to go do a bonding scene with Joe over here or Sally or whatever. Then you run from there, and it's more on the players to initiate it. So bingo. That okay. That totally sounds good to me. I I think overall I like this. I'm thinking about the way I've got my notes jotted down here. I'm thinking two other things about. on a character sheet or something, it's probably maybe beneficial to have these various ways to gain XP, maybe a tick box or whatever, uh, written out so that folks could check them off as they're done and then erase them at the end of the saga to be ready for fresh for a new one. I'm also thinking the last version of the XP costs on everything that I had looked at, which admittedly has been a couple weeks now. I feel like all of those costs probably need, at least from the last I'd looked at, need
Yeah.
reworked and brought way down from like the prior XP schemes you were looking at, where people were going to be earning, 10, 20, whatever XP. This looks like, at a quick glance, it's going to be more like 5 total rather than like 10 at a time.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And I do want to add in maybe one more thing to put in there for experience. But I want to see how this works first, where we're putting the experience point journey a lot more on the player as a role player. It's vastly different than, say, something like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's all focused on defeating the thing, right?
Right.
So there's going to be other rewards for beating the thing, and that reward is going to be your guild house gets more prestige. That's the whole goal of the game, right? Is to get your guild house high prestige to get into the Grand Alliance. But all these other things are just your personal growth as a player to gain that experience, right? It's, I mean, it's different. I don't know if people dig on it. So far during playtesting, though, it's been very good. I know I'm not the first person to come up with this. Um, it's just the first time I've seen it implemented in this way, where it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have anything to do really with how a person used their skill. This is more about how a person told the story and getting rewarded for it. But the tick box on the character sheets for sure. Um, yeah, I need to lower that down. It does make
Yeah.
me wonder if we can combine rest with bonding as well,
Okay. Okay.
right? Especially like for honor, because that's like your mental and mystical abilities or your attributes. So like just hanging out and talking with someone, that's a way to build that back up. So you'd have a good bonding session over that. But
I mean, I think that's very reasonable. I'm trying to think what potential downsides are. I feel like a lot of times in these discussions, that's it kind of inadvertently become my role is quick. What's the quickest way Will can think of that someone is going to break the system or cause someone else to feel bad?
right.
Um, so I'm trying to think then if you combined the two so that and any bonding scene is a rest, which is probably how I would frame it rather than a rest as a bonding. I know it's a tiny quibble, but
Yeah, no, I agree.
um,
I totally agree.
uh, but I don't know. I mean, there are probably the occasional players with the occasional kind of loner character, so to speak, that
Right.
would want a rest alone. Um, but I mean, I think those loner characters, as someone who has attempted to play them a couple times in role
Uh,
playing games, I think you quickly discover um, that person, that character, should probably just leave the group entirely and not be part of the party. Like if they're truly that character. Um, so and in particular, Honor Bound, like you said, has got that Three Musketeers kind of all for one feel. So, like, should any of the characters really be that grumpy loner anyway? I'm not sure they should. And I think combining rest and bonding into like one singular action um, really kind of solidifies that all for one feel mechanically even more.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And that was the other part that I really liked about the idea of getting experience points for bonding. It's just reinforcing the theme of what we wanted the game
Hmm.
anyway. We want people to be together. We want there to be a reason to adventure together, to be a group, and to care about each other. And what it comes down to mostly is that everyone joined this guild house because the guild house has a covenant, but the players create the covenant, right?
Hmm.
So you guys like put it together. This is the thing that you're going to be doing. Like, so in the playtest, the covenant that my playtesters put together was basically plunder mules, right? They they wanted to be like dungeon kind of delvers slash information couriers. Like it's like, okay, so what that tells me then for the GM is that you want adventures, that you want to travel to go places, you want to go to exotic locations, and you want to like go, I mean, dungeon delving, right? And what's amazing about this is that they're going to go into their first dungeon. This is a total side thing, but I just wanted to tell you because I'm very excited about it. They're going to go into their first dungeon at our next get together in 2 weeks, and it's a casino. Like, be the way that the system's put
Nice.
together is that there's only two skills for fighting. It's dueling and volley. There's 14 other skills that can be used in the exact same way for conflicts, and they're going to run into a lot of them by going into this casino that they know is a trap. Like, and then
Hmm.
yeah, there can be fighting if they want at the end, you know. I'm super excited. Um,
Um, no, I that sounds great. I love the casino dungeon sort of idea. I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about how that goes. What I've got my fingers crossed about here to not forget about is about bonds, and
yeah.
another idea hit me just now that maybe is good for general world building and maybe is good for somebody that does want to be a little bit of a more loner character. Anyway, I wondered, is it worth maybe also allowing players to earn an XP by doing a bonding scene with an NPC. I
Yep.
definitely wouldn't make it so open ended that they could do it like one per NPC, but one NPC per saga total, and would maybe give them the chance to go off and do something separate. Maybe, you've rescued, I don't know, the prince of this far off land, and, your character has this nice, scene where the two of them are looking off the balcony, reminiscing about wishing they could be together. I don't know what it might be, but it might be another option.
Uh, I 1,000,000% love that idea, and I'll tell you why. This is going to segue a little bit into the other thing I wanted to present as a possible system mechanic that can be used. So, adding as an NPC. Now, eh, prefacing this, you can't play a loner character, okay? In this, it just doesn't really work all that well. All right, that being said, the idea that I had that I thought you were going to go to is what if we do this? So essence gets discovered, what, 200 years ago or something like that, right?
Or rediscovered, as the argument may be.
Yes, yeah, exactly, 100%. Um, what if at the time people figure out that bonding is a way to heal, right? You can heal physically and or you have to choose which one, and or honor that you're going to be healing. Um, but if you're with someone else, you can bond with each other to heal. Like it's something to do with the essence and the spark of sharing energy back and forth or whatever to make a heal. Now that makes everyone a paladin with like a lay on hands ability, but it's not because you have to have the time to hang out together, right? So you
Right,
can't just
right.
do it in a scene. You have to have lots of time to
Yeah.
be able to bond.
Okay.
How
So
does
just basically just a fluff reason that the two actions are combined, basically.
mhm. How does that grab you
Um,
as a shaper of the world?
uh, I mean, high level conceptually, I like the whole kind of life force, spark, essence, whatever kind of sharing, bonding, kind of group healing sort of thing. Um, Slightly more nitty gritty. Um, it does make me think if we went that way, where there's kind of an in universe mechanic for it, um, like establishing a magical spell in Harry Potter, so to speak, you
Mhm.
still need to kind of establish some rules for how that does or doesn't work. It makes me wonder if we would need to establish some requirements for that, like duration, like length of time, like you said, still needing to be able to sit down and really bond. How long is that? Is that an hour with each other? Is that you know 4 hours? Like, kind
Sure.
of roughly what is it?
And even if
And
we just
that might affect the world, like in a general sense, if this is pretty easy.
I like the idea of calling it 4 hours question mark, because maybe your bond actually takes only 5 minutes, but you'll never know when it's going to happen,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You have to get to a certain level of comfort with each other for it to happen. Now, this is all
Okay.
just dealing with the fluff. I think that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
That it's you don't know when it's going to happen. It's not a constant build-up sort of thing.
Okay. I like
It's
that. That
just
makes it a little more mysterious than mechanical. At least in universe.
yeah, in universe. And then I also thought that another interesting thought then too is that we can put in a character advantage of like what if you're one of the medium characters, right? Where you're a high sensory ability and your mysticism levels all jacked up. Um, that maybe you can take an advantage that when you bond with someone, you give an extra die or double it or whatever. And so then everyone's going
Okay.
to want to bond
So
with you, which makes
everyone's
it
fighting
weird,
over
right?
bonding with
But
you.
I think that's an
Okay.
interesting mechanic just by talking about this. Now, I want to hop over because I like where we're at and we can build off that. Uh, is how saga points are earned in the game right now. Right now, there needs to be a lot more playtesting. I mean, I don't know about a lot, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is the idea.
Okay.
Um, you know how I put in that write up is that our first adventure there were a ton of saga points left over, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Not so much in this one. This one has a lot more of an even keel to the point that even two characters used a couple of their bequeathments.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I was like, okay, great. That's exactly what I want to have happen. And I
Hmm.
also thought of another thing for the economy, but that'll be for another episode.
Okay.
Um, Calling it the trinket economy. uh, so the idea is so getting those saga points and like how you get them, how are you rewarded during gameplay? And so my idea is now this is that we'd already been talking about the chivalrous kind of code of honor sort of thing, right?
Hmm.
What if when you build, everyone builds their guild house at the beginning of the game, you pick out three codes of chivalry. And that is just something that if you do it during the game, you get a saga point. And the examples I have right now, if we just go like, let's say you don't have to choose them, like these are just the three or four things, okay? And my list right now is as follows.
Quick
It
question before you
is
read
it,
the list:
yes,
is that on top of the role-based Saga generation, or instead of?
on top of.
Okay.
So because it is just dice, right? We've had in the longer that we play, the more it's going to level out for us, right? I am seeing a lot less stuff. It like I said, yeah, the first one there was saga points coming out of their ears. Just I don't know, it's just the rolls were crazy or what. Now this time around, is a little bit more even, then is even a little bit down. So I think they're probably in an okay place. But what if we put in another role-playing aspect where you could earn some more saga points, but they're not things that'll happen all the time.
Yeah.
So, for instance, being brave or daring, that's super generic. Expressing courtly love and defending yours or impugning a rival's honor. So if we just go for those three things that you can do as
Mm-hmm.
well during role playing to gain a saga point. Now, doing something daring or brave, it has to be a wow moment. So it's not going to happen that often anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
The expressing courtly love. I love the idea of introducing that NPC because this is exactly what I want to have happen in the game. And then finally, defending your
Oh,
honor.
right. That bonding scene would give you the chance to express that love. Gotcha.
Yep, but you
Yep.
could also then get a saga point at the same time. Like, great.
Yeah.
I love that. That's works wonderfully. And then yeah, the last one is defending your honor. So if someone says something bad about your house, basically your guild house, you can let it slide or you can defend it.
So the three that you mentioned just now
Mhm.
were essentially the three that we had in previously that were guidelines for players.
Yep, but they were
Um,
experience points previously, but
experience. Okay,
yeah.
there we go. Um, but you mentioned something just a moment ago about the guilds that I thought you were going one way, and then you went a different way
Uh,
here.
okay.
So bear with me if this idea sounds insane. But you mentioned like during like guild creation or whatever about like picking some, and
Yes.
you mentioned just three. But what if we got that list up to say five or maybe six? Probably not too huge, and then during their guild creation, they pick whichever three are most important, and then now you potentially have in universe you've got different guilds that maybe have a bit of a different opinion of what chivalry is, which could lead to some cool conflict. And it gives some cool, I think, replayability kind of just hooks for players that they're like, oh man, last game we did such and such. Okay, well let's try a guild this time that really focuses on these, and that kind of that skews the game in a different flavor direction and gives guidelines for them and the GM.
1 billion%. Absolutely. That's totally was the goal that I was going for. I just want to
Okay,
start off with like the default three because
gotcha.
but you're totally right. Like, can you imagine a list of 10, right? And uh, one of those things is like taking money, right? Like for your house, you get a saga point for taking money from someone. Like that, oh, okay. Well, we don't really want to be those people, but this house is. So you can develop, and this thought occurred to me yesterday, is by choosing these different things, like you said, it creates their own alignment system in
Mm-hmm.
universe.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that. One thing that possibly jumps out to me, and this may not really be a concern, but you mentioned potentially a list as big as 10. And the first thing that jumps out at me then is, well, then you could have in universe this guild over here that has these three conceptions of chivalry, and then over here this one that I don't have enough fingers, but we're gonna at least try to illustrate that they don't overlap between the two.
Sure.
And I'm not sure off the top of my head if that is more or less interesting. Sort of my gut thought was if they overlap on one, and then the others are different, then there's kind of more of them kind of bickering over their interpretations, or more grounds to say, oh no, you're doing it wrong or whatever,
Hmm.
as compared to, oh no, you just truly have completely separate goals. And so on the one hand, I thought, well, something like 10 maybe is too many if you're only picking three, then they don't overlap. Then I thought just now, well, I don't know, maybe you set one that's a baseline that all guilds follow, and then they pick two others that kind of color that. So everybody then does overlap on one. It's the same one for everybody,
Yeah,
but the other two or three or whatever kind of shift how they all interact with that.
yeah. Well, and I like that idea of maybe like here's two, right? Like these are two that everyone agrees on. This is how the world works. Society has agreed. These are the things that are important. And then you get one or two more depending on your house. I was going 10 because I was going so far as to think about like honorable or dishonorable houses. Like you could just
Yeah,
flat up make
yeah,
those, oh, these guys are just the bad guys, you know?
yeah. Well, I thought about that in the current like base three. The last one really is two kind of that are smushed together, right? About was it either defending someone or impugning somebody else?
Yeah,
And I immediately thought, oh, those could be split into two separate things.
yeah,
And now you can have a house that says, among other things, their chivalry involves impugning other people that aren't, in their opinion, living up to it.
yeah.
Like, oh, that sounds super fun. And even that, depending on what other things you have, you could skew that as good but hoity-toity, or you could skew that as, like you said, straight up like, yeah, they're kind of shady.
Yeah.
they're they're Scorpion Clan for any Legend of the Five Rings fans.
And that's exactly what I want because like the underground in criminal background thrives in this world and they're not thought of as like, oh, they're just bad guys. It's like, nope, they're a valuable part of our society. It's just that we put them in jail sometimes. You know, like it's a different view on how we view crime and the way that works. Uh, I God, you just said something too that I thought was a lot of fun. But yeah, really want this to work. Well, I like this idea of how to do saga points, giving people an option. Right now, we're just doing like, here's the three things, because here's the other flip side. And this is a totally other topic that we've gone off on, is the idea of if you do something or don't do something, you lose honor.
Oh, right, right.
And so here's that list that I've come up with, and it's attacking someone who is unarmed, not defending the helpless, or not accepting a duel that has just cause. Like if
Hmm.
you don't do those things, you lose honor. And so if you lose honor by not doing something, you gain saga points by doing something,
Yeah, that makes
right?
sense.
Um, but that's a lot of rules all of a sudden,
Yeah,
right? That's just
yeah.
six things to keep track of. So I'm not doing the lose honor thing
On
right
on
now.
top of all the XP triggers, on
Right.
top of personal saga triggers, that's a really good point. And oddly enough, you're making the type of point that I normally make, which is, crap, is this too many layers?
But it's awesome though. It's so much fun. But yeah,
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
now,
I mean that, like,
especially
I'm really enjoying like thinking about this, but you might have a point.
and especially going through the play testing, we haven't even gotten into gain a saga point by doing this, lose honor by not doing that. Haven't even introduced that idea because we're just
Hmm.
getting the system down. We're just into the flow. Now, the next saga that we do, I'll introduce the gain saga points by doing these things. And that's probably what we'll just have to stick to. But the maybe if we can put that in, like, pick the three things, and it's like lose honor, gain saga.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't quite work because why would you ever choose the thing that you lose honor in?
Right. Right. Trying to think. Off the top of my head, another possibility might be, and I know you were already kind of, well, now that we're looking at this other XP stuff, I don't know if sagas stay like they are or stay at all or whatever. Maybe they just kind of get compressed into XP and they just become kind of other potential triggers there. And then you take the rewards for that were formerly saga rewards and we probably come up with some new category to call them since like you pointed out they weren't like advantages or abilities or whatever, but come up with some other kind of category and assign an XP cost to them,
Gotcha.
and then everything is just lumped in. Hey, to some extent for any of these activities, including some of them that were under personal saga before, you can earn XP, and then it's up to you what you want to spend the XP on. And you could still get the same stuff out of that pool by spending XP, but it maybe feels like less layers of systems if you're earning the same resource and spending the same resource.
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. Um, it's something to think about because I don't know yet, right? I feel like adding another track is going to get weird only because you have to keep track of the Guild House experience track too. But that being said, I don't know how to do this personal saga thing. So maybe this is it, right? Instead of telling your own personal story of your background and your history, you are living in the moment, doing chivalrous acts to gain health, honor. Um, I have to look it up on the sheet, but well, but yeah, like these three things, three, four. I think it's four things you can keep getting. You just have to go through them one at a time. Um, that's a good thought, though. But I feel really good about this. I feel really good with this direction. Now, how
Yeah.
do you feel going all the way back to the beginning of this conversation of why it got sparked? And that was because of creating cultural identity, which means
Mm,
on our
yeah.
part is that we're going to have to let go of some of the things that we've already written. Some of them,
Oh,
not much, I
really?
don't think.
I mean,
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think, I mean, maybe I need to go back and reread with a critical eye, but I felt like everything that was in right now is pretty, zoomed out, big picture view.
yeah, I think it is too. But when we go to present this in a book, like, hey, this is the species, right? Like, if we do the Iliad or Iliad
Hmm.
that you've written, I don't know if it's the most on, or the Centillions, I think I've got the most written on because they're the
Maybe. The,
weirdest, right?
they are the weirdest. The Iliad, I think, are my favorite, but yeah, the Centillions are definitely the weirdest.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, as part of her species we put together, centillions are a collection of bacteria, sentient bacteria,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
they're a sentient bacterial colony.
Yeah. In
Or multiple
humanoid
colonies, really, but anyway,
in humanoid shape, right?
most of the
Um,
time.
yeah, most of the time. Don't have to be, depending if you take those abilities or not. Um, and there's a lot that was written out about because it's cool. It's interesting ideas getting put through it. Um, but if you take that same information, right? Can you par it down to like one page? Like I think that's gonna be actually probably pretty easy. I think one of the things that we probably need to do is to get what are the four things or three things that we need to make sure that we mention in each species
Mm,
profile.
yeah, yeah.
Um, once we do that, then we can like, okay, here you go. Here's all the things. We don't want to step on anyone's toes. Now, something to throw out there on that character sheet, like on the back of it or something like that, do we want to write out cultural prompts? Like we already have, you'll get XP points if you do something like this. Do you just want to write those prompts out, or do you just leave it as like, you know what? Maybe something just loves coming up with ceremonies or holidays, and every time they do a new saga, they do a new holiday. Like that's fine, you know.
I think you probably still mark them down as a guideline for folks, right? And partly for the guideline to like spark an idea, hopefully, but also if you're limiting them to only say the holiday example, only one new holiday per saga to make it clear they have a spot to like mark off. Hey, they've already claimed the XP for that this saga.
What I'm asking about, because I like the little tick mark for just like, hey, did I do it or not? Like that's
Okay,
important for
gotcha.
that. Like that's just a little box, like this is a
Oh, you mean like space to write details about what they established?
yes. Like, do we give them like, hey, in order for you to create a well-rounded species, you have to answer these six things, and then here's another six to put whatever you want, you know? Like, do we give them an assignment basically of you need to come up with these six things about your culture? Or
Oh, for like character creation, like
not
separate from the XP prompt stuff.
no, this would be the XP prompt stuff.
Okay.
Is that during while you're doing these sagas, is like you have to each person has to answer for their species of like what is the major ceremony every decade or something like that. Like, do we give people an assignment saying, hey, during these sagas, you have to fill these cultural sheets out as a much more hardline guideline sort of thing
Mm.
if they need it? Or do we say, hey, here's four different things. Just do it in role playing. Have fun. Don't worry about it.
I think as nitty gritty as some of the other stuff is going toward, and you pointing out um, the multiple layers kind of we're looking at the moment. I think maybe just the categories. Hey, if it as it comes up in play, is probably the safer direction to go at the moment.
I think so too. But I know there's a couple people in my old original group
Mm-hmm.
that would want like I I need a checklist of things to explore with my culture. Like, and I'd be like, yeah, that's fine because that's just the way that they play, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to get through that checklist before they feel comfortable enough to start doing things on their own to take the full ownership of it. Um, but yeah, that was just a thought that I had on there. But I feel, like I said, I feel awesome about this. I feel really good about the XP. I feel really good about the saga point. I think starting off like with the like here's just the three, but if we can come up with a system that can make it like five during creation, pick three. That sounds like a ton of fun.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I really like the bonding and healing being put together for an
Mm-hmm.
intermission. And so, like during the intermission, maybe you can either bond or you can tell your personal saga, um, depending on what you want to gain. Um,
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good point as far as when flashbacks could occur. If it's framed as your character telling a story to the other character, that does feel a little more organic that way.
and like if you want, if you are just a lone wolf type character player anyway, because I get it, this is not for everyone, right? Talking with people, bonding with people, it's not for everyone. I get that. But that could be a good way to do it. It's like, hey, just talk about your own character for a little bit. You know, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You have to answer. That's what I need to do. I need to come up with the categories about what your personal saga is, like I've done for categories for experience points.
Mm,
But that's just another layer.
okay.
That's another track. God dang it! It's just too
Yeah.
many tracks. Just too many tracks. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, all right. I don't know if we're going to answer it on this one
Yeah.
because
We have
in
been recording for quite a while already.
defined form, it's because we haven't been doing it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I've already sat here and thought about like two other episode ideas that I'm like, don't even bring it up yet, Will, or we'll just do it right now and just this will be a 3 hour recording.
So I wonder, just as a meta talking about this episode, um, to cut it off when we switch over talking about saga points. That might be something. I don't know. Because we're talking about experience points, and then we switch over to start talking about saga points. They kind of blend together, so I don't know.
Th- They do. But yeah, you mean as far as do a separate episode talking about saga points? Yeah, I think
Or
that
just
that'd be
split
a good
this one
episode.
up so you have two different episodes. Part one and
Uh
part two, maybe.
oh, gotcha. What we have already recorded. I gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, this is great. If you haven't taken a look at the rule book source, um, I feel really solid about it. I feel really good that things are going to be knocked out of the park in a couple months pretty easily. We'll be down just to tweaking some stuff. The repeated thing that I get from playtesting, love the mechanics. Mechanics are solid. So that's half
I
the
mean,
fight, I think.
that sounds awesome. I'm glad that folks are digging it, and I'm looking forward to watching the playtesting sessions this week.
Right on, right on. I just kind of ran out of gas. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. How about for our listeners' sake, we're gonna officially wrap this episode of Will and Jerod Make a Game. If you are curious to follow us more, make sure you're checking us out on various social medias. You can find all of my gaming stuff on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and the like under Gamenomicon. That's the company's name. It's like Necronomicon, but replace Necro for dead with game for, games. I know. It is a trickier name than I thought when I thought I was being witty. So you can find me in all of those type of places. Even technically still on X at the Gamenomicon, but find me on Threads instead. I'm more active there. Um, Jerod, I think, can be found on certainly on YouTube and a few other places. Where else?
Yep, YouTube, just looking under Jerod Leopold. My website that I am still supporting, because I think it's still probably worthwhile at this point, is a company name, Paroxysm by Design. It is probably a lot quicker just to look for Goblin Market, honestly. And Goblin Market, Goblin is spelled with a Y. So,
Byblon, right?
wait, no. Uh,
Uh,
so yeah, check us out
yeah.
websites. Come hang out with us on Discord, on the Gamenomicon Discord.
Definitely. And I'll try to make sure I start putting the links to that in the episode notes because I forgot to do that with episode one. So we'll get that rectified.
Perfect. Hey, thanks so much for talking with me, Will. It's always good to touch base face to face the best we can. It really helps me organize my thoughts a little bit better about what I want to say, what I want to go for. It's just not the same trying to share it over emails and stuff like that. This helps a ton.
Yeah, yeah. Discord, Google Doc comments, all that stuff. This is better. I agree.
Right on. You have yourself a great night.
See ya.